Hi, everyone.
Hi again. We're in Genesis chapter 13 now, verses 5 to 9 in the NIV.
Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. And quarreling arose between Abram's herdsmen and the herdsmen of Lot. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at that time. So Abram said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herdsmen and mine, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left."
Well, maybe if we're just doing a devotional reading of this, it doesn't occur to us that they've traveled thousands of miles. They've come all the way from Ur to Haran, stopped there for some time, and then gone on to the Promised Land. And then apparently Abraham and Lot and his nephew and his family, extended family, and part of this clan, the Abrahamic clan, and Abram being the patriarch, they've traveled all this distance, and now they're parting. And the reason they're parting is not because of adversity,
but prosperity.
Prosperity is parting them, and that's an irony that I wouldn't have seen years ago. That don't we all want prosperity? And isn't that the promise of the Old Testament? But it has this flip side.
Yeah, it has a downside that you don't think of. So we think of even our own two families moving here from Europe because they thought better chances for our children, better education, better future. So, but at the same time, you grow up without your extended family.
Yeah.
You grow up without your cousins and your aunts and your uncles, and at that time, even visiting was not very
easy,
possible, or talking on the phone wasn't possible. It was too expensive.
I remember my mother's sister and her, who were still in their early 30s. No, one of them was in her 20s, and my mom was just over 30.
Yeah.
Thinking that they might never see each other again. This is in the 1950s, and that's just England.
Yeah.
So they're writing to one another continually. But what is that except that things have changed so much since I was a teenager, now that we take for granted international travel, and people aren't parted by adversity as we were in those days in the post-war period. They're parted by prosperity. They make choices, career choices, that go across continents or even across the sea.
Yeah. And then you think in our day that it's going to be easy, but it's changed. Things have changed, so it's not easy to travel anymore.
And even the tensions here, they're created by the prosperity, aren't they?
Yeah.
They've traveled thus far together, and now they have to part because of the land can't support them all.
And I think we oftentimes think that material things, that advantage is going to be so good for our family, our children. But what children need is time with their family and their extended family more than they need things.
I think a lot of us are thinking a lot more about these choices we've made in since the pandemic broke out. Now we have families that at least theoretically could be permanently parted by adversity. Yeah. We made the choices that got us into this dilemma, didn't we? So I'm thinking of this passage too in Ecclesiastes. This is from Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 10 to 15. And of course this is written much later, so the book of Ecclesiastes is canonized towards the end of the Old Testament period, probably even as late as 400, 300 BC. And by that time, their view of prosperity seems to have morphed. So listen to this passage from Ecclesiastes. "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. What advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. There is a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt. and those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he is father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, so shall he go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. We read that thought in Timothy, Paul talking about it, but we don't realize he got it from the Old Testament. So already by the end of the Old Testament, they're seeing that this blessing that is there, actually promised in the Old Testament to those who are obedient to God, isn't sufficient. So by the time you get to the New Testament, you're suddenly confronted with the emphasis upon sacrifice and suffering as being central to our growth.
And I liked at the beginning of it because it when you have money, you tend to spend it. So you spend a lot of time getting it, and then you spend a lot of time spending it. But you're sacrificing maybe family for doing that.
And almost everything else sometimes. Yeah.
So which is better? The time that you're able to spend, sweet sleep of the laborer, but at least he still can, maybe have his time with his family, because he's only interested in taking care of his daily needs.
Yeah.
That is something that it takes a while to learn that you worry when you have a lot of things and money that you'll lose them.
How easy it is to forget. They'll give us this day our daily bread. We're not asking for insurance for the hypothetical rainy day, are we?
Yeah.
But we're all prone to this because it's completely around us in the culture. Here's what Griffith Thomas has to say about wealth. A careful study of the entire Bible seems to show that there is no sin in being wealthy, provided the riches have been honorably obtained, are regarded as belonging to God, and are being constantly used as in the sight of God. At the same time, wealth very seriously increases the responsibility of a believer, and his riches will soon become a sin if they are not used properly and with a sense of stewardship, not of ownership. I love that line.
Yeah.
Riches will soon become a sin if they are not used properly and with a sense of stewardship, not of ownership.
Yeah, I liked that he said it belongs to God. Whatever you have is a trust. It belongs to God. So use it that way. Then F.B. Meyer writes, Lot seems to have been one of those men who takes right steps not because they are prompted by obedience to God, but because their friends are taking them. In every great religious movement, there always have been and always will be a number of individuals who cast in their lot with it, without knowing the power which inspires it. Beware of them. They cannot stand the stress of life, of separation to God. The mere excitement will soon die away from them, and having no principle to take its place, they will become hindrances and disturbers of the peace.
Well, is that Lot he's talking about or thinking about here? This is his book on Abraham, F.B. Meyer's book on Abraham, which is wonderful. And yet you think, okay, the next part of the story, we see maybe the mistake that Abram is making in giving Lot first choice. Because what does Lot choose in the next segment? Yeah,
he chooses selfishly when he does choose, So really, there's a problem both ways. Abraham, in one way, is being generous, but at the same time, he's maybe putting Lot in temptation's way.
Maybe Lot can't cope with this, and he proves it immediately, because when he goes to Sodom, he's, in the very next chapter, kidnapped with his family and needs to be rescued. And then, of course, he goes right back.
Right.
That's the part that's really unbelievable that you might not notice in the story. So, is there progress in Abram's character, though? And I think that's kind of notable here, isn't it?
Yeah. In one way there is. But it's forgetting that Lot's not made that progress yet, maybe. So, Donald Gray Barnhouse says, Abram, as the leader, the elder, the one to whom God had given the promises, might have asserted his rights, but he abandoned them. He had learned the great lesson that the only right we have is the right to go to hell. Everything else is ours by grace.
And Victor Hamilton says the Abram now resettled in Canaan contrasts sharply with the Abram in Egypt. He who earlier fomented strife now moves to nip strife in the bud. The manipulation that Abram formerly manifested now gives way to magnanimity. Lot, unlike Sarai, is given a free hand. One wonders if Abram's return to the altar and meeting with God in verse 4 had anything to do with this change in disposition. He's prepared to sacrifice what has been promised to him, as he will later willingly offer Isaac, who had been promised to him. Well, we remember that Abraham doesn't have to offer this ultimate sacrifice of the son he's longed for well, all of his life.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do that until the very end, when he's prepared. His character is prepared for that.
So I think it's a series of tests throughout life. And here Abraham is showing more trust in God than he had previously. So he's winning the test at this point, I would say.
Put in a link to Martin Hengel's discussion of property, land, and equality in ancient Israel. See you next time.
Okay.